It's time to get organized. So for a while now, I have kept my pastels like this, and they're kind of taking up a lot of space, especially as I start to get more pastels. My vintage pastels were so piled up in the box that I couldn't even access them, and once I started organizing them, I made a very cool discovery that led me down a bit of a rabbit hole. I'll share that with you later in the video. I think the foam is making it so that these take up a lot of space. And I know a lot of artists have all their pastels together. I've always been kind of cautious to do that because I didn't want to get confused about what pastel was which. So I came up with a compromise that I think's ideal for the intermediate. I'm Heather Nelson, and this is my studio space. It's easier for me now to just access my pastels, which are now organized into the different brands. For a long time, I have kept my Rembrandts all together, and I have kept them organized somewhat by color, and that has worked out pretty well for me. So I was thinking I'd like to do the same with this bunch of pastels. I took the foam segments out one at a time. My Sennelier box actually already had some cardboard dividers, so I just added a little bit of paper towel in order to kind of cushion the pastels and keep things a little cleaner. And at first, I was a little too preoccupied by organizing by value from the get-go, and that actually was a little time-consuming. Eventually, I would figure out just to toss everything that was remotely a similar color into the same compartment. And this was where it can start getting a little confusing because actually, this is more of like a brown color. Many of my orange pastels run more towards the brown, and I think that's because I actually do a lot of wildlife, so I have a lot of brown and rusty kind of colors. But brown and rust that sort of look like orange, it had my brain kind of in a quandary. If you're a fan of art tutorials and art vlogs, please like and subscribe. It gets confusing when you're on the borders between colors. Like, it's all fun and games when you just throw down a blue, but then when you have a purpley blue, there starts to be some confusion about exactly where in the box you should drop it. We all know I'm not going to be able to keep very organized in the long run anyway, because I'm afraid that's me. I'll put them all back in crazy fashion. Given my doubts about my long-term organizational skills, I decided, you know what, as long as this is the blue compartment and bluish kinds of things are in the blue compartment, I can probably stay on top of that. Can I stay on top of a perfectly organized blue compartment by value? Likely not. Probably best to just know yourself and recognize your own organizational skills. I feel like you can never have enough different shades of green. For some reason, you never really have quite the perfect green for a particular bit of foliage. So it's important to have bluey greens, grassy greens, evergreens, limey greens. Once you start bringing in the limey greens, of course, then it gets confusing because now we're going more towards yellow. So is this also going to be the yellow compartment? I had some yellows in with the oranges, but the yellows look good here. So I went with it and I added my yellow collection. I decided not to get too precious about it, and I just started throwing anything that roughly looked like that color into that compartment and finished up. My friend had inherited these pastels and then gifted them to me, so there's a couple sets of Grumbachers and then a set of Geo-Rownies, which I do not know a lot about. Grumbacher set here is a landscape set, and as I was looking at them, I discovered something really cool. The Grumbachers had the Schminke symbol on them. So Schminke and Grumbacher, is there a relationship there? And it turns out there is. I did some research on it. Some websites said there was no connection between the companies, but my package says differently. And then I discovered the Artist Network. I narrowed the age of my vintage pastels to be manufactured somewhere between the 1950s or in the 1970s. Then I lost steam for research. I do have plans for better storage of my pan pastels, but that's how I'm keeping them right now. So I've got my Senneliers here by color, and then my Grumbachers are in here. I've got a couple different types of those. Terry Ludwigs are up here. My Rembrandts are all organized up on top here. Here's my Unisons, and then I've got some Schminkas and some Rownies. I don't actually know much about those. And then I also have my new pastels I'm keeping the box that this is a project that I'm working on, so this is a current palette of pastels right there. After all that organizing, it was time to do a little bird watching. If you'd like to know more about the pastels I recommend, you could watch this video.